Hello, welcome to Real Recipes with FCHS. I'm Daryl Minch from FCHS of Somerset County, and today we're making whole grain stuffed tomatoes. Stuffed tomatoes are a wonderful way to enjoy the fruits of summer. Tomatoes are great because they have lots of vitamins, vitamin A, C, K. They have potassium, magnesium, and they're full of fiber. So I got this one at the farm market yesterday. It's a nice size. It's a slicing tomato, which means it has more juice and not quite as much pulp as the plum tomatoes. This one came from my garden. It's a little bit smaller. This is a nice meal-sized tomato. This would be nice as a side. Again, depends on your family or perhaps for a child. So the ingredients I'll post later, but it is a very friendly recipe in that you can do lots of different things with the recipe and vary the amounts. So we're going to start by making our tomato shells, and to do that we're going to cut the tomatoes. I'm going to do it over a bowl because they are a little bit messy at times, and you have two choices. One is to kind of cut out the inside of the core, and I think a serrated knife works really well. I've already washed my hands and I've washed the tomatoes. You always want to wash all your fresh produce just under running water. If the produce has been laying on the ground or it has a rough outer surface, you may want to use a vegetable brush just to get in the nooks and crannies, but otherwise just lots of fresh running water and your hands to rub the vegetables. So I took out the core, and now what I'm going to do is cut around here just a little bit wider to widen up the mouth of the tomato. And we're going to save the pulp, we're going to use it. And I'm going to cut down, again, I don't want to cut the edges or make holes in the bottom so that the food leaks out. And then I'm just going to use a spoon to kind of scoop out. Sometimes it's a little tricky. Depends on how ripe the tomato is. Okay. I'm getting out the inner part, and I'm going to leave, a nice wall of tomato for the next piece, and I'm saving all the inside. So here's my sliced tomato. Another way you can do this is to take your tomato and just slice off the top, and it gives you a nice flat edge, and then you can easily cut the inside a little bit and then hollow out the middle. Now what you want to do is you want to save these in the refrigerator once you've cut them, or if you do this ahead, you could make your salad first, keep that in the refrigerator, and then close to serving time you could do your tomatoes. So I'm going to set that aside. Now I don't want to waste any of this. I'm going to use some of this in my recipe, and some of it I'm going to put in a bag. So I'm just going to cut this up. If you have chunks, you're just going to cut it up into smaller pieces. We want to make sure we save all the goodness of the tomatoes. Okay, we're going to put this in here. Cut this up just a little bit. Okay. All right, so we have our tomatoes cut up there. I'm just going to put these aside for a minute. Wipe my hands. Just wipe this off a little bit. And then our salad, to make that, you're going to use a whole grain. Whole grains are really good because it includes all parts of the grain, and it gives you more fiber. It gives you some of the natural oils that occur in the bran, and it gives you the rest of the grain. Today I'm using quinoa. It is, I pre-cooked this. It's from Peru. It's really cool if you've never used it. As you cook it, these are very tiny grains. I highly recommend you rinse the grains in a fine mesh strainer prior to use, because naturally the grain has a covering on it. It's kind of soapy. It protects the grain from insects and other things. It won't hurt you, but it's very bitter. A lot of times the grains are washed before they come to market and dried and come to market, but I think you can reduce the bitterness a little bit more if you rinse it under running water. When you cook the grain, what happens is the germ, that's the part that has the fat in it, spirals out. It looks like a little curlicue, and that's the grain is done. Other grains you could use farro, brown rice, bulgur, whatever grain you want. Again, whole grains give you that fiber that is taken away if you used a refined, like a white rice. So I have 2 cups of a grain here. This will do at least 4 nice medium-sized tomatoes. Again, easy recipe to change. So 2 cups of fully cooked whole grain. And now we're going to add about a cup of vegetables. You could do whatever vegetables you want, mix and match. If you want more than a cup, go right ahead. So I have some chopped onion. I used a Vidalia because it's a little milder in taste. I cut it up fairly fine. I'm using some grated carrot. I had some nice red pepper in my garden, so I'm using that. Yellow, green, whatever pepper. I go for a lot of color since we eat with our eyes. And then I'm using some chopped zucchini that I have. So it's a little over a cup. Oops. And you could use cucumber. Again, whatever vegetables you want. So I'm just going to give this a stir. And it looks really colorful here. In fact, I'll show you up close. Okay, so nice and colorful. If you want more vegetables in proportion to the grain, again, add more or use a little less grain. Now I'm going to make use of this tomato pulp. It'll add moisture as well as, so I'm going to use about, I was going to use a 1/4 cup, but I'm going to use a little bit more. Again, this is up to you. There is juice in there, but again, it adds some moisture and it puts some more tomato in the dish. And that's all there is to this piece. Now we're going to dress this in 2 ways. First of all, I want to show you. So the extra tomato that I didn't use, here's a good way to, you don't want to waste food. So I take a freezer bag. They're a little heavier than regular bags. I've labeled it, and I labeled it fresh tomatoes for soup or stew or even sauce. The slicing tomatoes are kind of watery for sauce by themselves, but you could add a little bit too. So I put this in a bag, a freezer bag, and I'm going to toss this in my freezer. It's dated summer of 2020, and I can add more to this later on, so I can fill the bag up to the top, and then when I want to make a soup sometime in the fall, I can just toss this in the soup. I'm going to add basil to my salad. I have lots of basil in my garden. I used about 6 large pieces of basil, and I'm going to chiffonade them, so I'm going to stack them up and roll them really tightly. And then I'm going to use a knife, and I'm going to cut them into ribbons. Fairly narrow. And that's all chiffonade means, is to cut into ribbons, and you have this really nice ribbons of that. And we're going to toss that in the salad. You can use as much or as little. You could add dried seasonings if you want. And I'm going to use, you need some sort of dressing on the salad. So I'm going to use an oil and vinegar based piece. I'm going to use about a 1/4 cup. Again, you're going to do this according to taste. Your dressing should not be soaking through. It should just be eyeballing. So for a vinaigrette, it's about 3 to 1. So I'm using a good quality olive oil, extra virgin, which means it's the first pressing of the olives. It has the most antioxidants in it, and it'll have really nice flavor. You want to look for olive oil that's in a dark bottle because olive oil is degraded by light. So keep it in a dark cabinet, probably not out on your kitchen counter because you probably have some sunshine and also lighting. So keep it in the cabinet. Now we're going to use a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. You could use lemon juice. You could use another kind of vinegar, lime juice. Again, a vinaigrette is really up to you. I'm going to put in a little bit of freshly ground pepper, and I'm going to add just probably 1/8 teaspoon of salt. We don't need much salt. It does add a little bit of flavor, but we don't want to use too much because it's not good for blood pressure. And I'm just using a fork to emulsify the oil and vinegar. It smells so good. Now, if you don't want to use vinaigrette, you can use mayonnaise. And to be honest, I don't like mayonnaise. So that's why I use vinaigrette. My husband would prefer the mayonnaise, so whatever dressing you want. And I would say about 1/4 cup. Again, you don't want it to be soaking in, so we're just gonna pour this over. And if you have the time, you can make this ahead, put this in the refrigerator for a little while to let the flavors really meld, and then stuff your tomatoes right close to serving time. Tomatoes are also high in lycopene. Lycopene is an antioxidant. It is good for heart health and helps prevent some types of cancer, perhaps. That's what the research is saying. It is actually more bioavailable if there's a little oil in the dish, and also if the tomato is a cooked product. So we do have a little oil. It's not a cooked product, but we have a little oil. So now to make our final product, I'm going to bring back my tomatoes. Actually, let's do one at a time. So I have my tomato here. It's all cut out. If you make these ahead, sometimes you have to pour off a little bit of the extra liquid that might be in there. And then I'm just going to scoop in my whole grain salad. It takes a little over 1/4 cup. You want it to be a little bit over the top so that it looks really pretty. If you this has quite a bit of basil in it, but you could garnish it with another fresh basil leaf. We'll just do one of the other little ones. Smaller one, that's going to be my lunch. Again, you're probably going to want to stuff it over one plate and then put it on a separate dish to serve. So here's our finished stuffed tomato with whole grain salad. Really easy, comes together great. It's a wonderful way to use that fresh flavor you have of summer. If you like tomatoes, I'm going to invite you to tomorrow's The Great Tomato Tasting at Home. It's usually an event held at our research farm in Hunterdon County, but this year it will be virtual. We have webinars, resources, Facebook Live all day. At noon, FCHS is doing a Facebook Live at noon with Sandra Gruncy. She's making a tomato white bean dip. I'm doing a peach tomato salsa at 3 p.m. And we also have a webinar called Let's Eat and Preserve Tomatoes at 6 p.m. Facebook, you could just tune in to FCHS, Rutgers Cooperative Extension. If you want to do the webinar at 6, you need to register. So the website to get all the information is snyderfarm.rutgers.edu. That's snyderfarm.rutgers.edu. We also have Wellness Wednesdays at 2 p.m. tomorrow with Luann Hughes. She'll be talking about fruits and vegetables. On Friday, Jen from my office will be doing, what's she doing? Oh, artichoke pie at 11. So we have lots to offer. I hope you have a wonderful day, and please try to make the tomato grain salad. Have a wonderful day. Bye.